Let's take you back now to one of our top stories, and this, of course, what has been taking place at the Constitutional Court. You'd remember the lawyers of former President Jacob Zuma were arguing that, the remission of sentence, for example, means that you've cut the sentence. It's now 3 months instead of 15. But at the same time, you have the IEC that is now seeking clarity around Section 47 of the Constitution. All of this centers around the eligibility of former President Jacob Zuma to stand in that MK party list. But the IEC says that this is not the only reason. They also want certainty, especially when it comes to future elections. So let's wrap the day in court for you and speak to SABC News reporter Canny Maphanga, who was watching developments for us there. Canny, before we even talk about the latter part of the day in court, let's start with the unsuccessful bid by former President Jacob Zuma's lawyers to have some of the justices recuse themselves because in their view, they were harboring unconscious bias towards him.
Well, good evening to you, Bongiwe, and to the viewers at home. Indeed, it's been quite a lengthy day at the Constitutional Court as it tries to dabble as to what is the correct interpretation as to Section 47 of Section 1E. Advocate Galimpopo, on behalf of Mkhonto and the former president, is still making his arguments in opposition of the IEC's application. However, this morning we did start with the recusal application by the former president, who wanted 6 ConCourt justices to be recused from the matter because they had previously sat on the contempt of court. And they argued that there are substantial links between the contempt of court judgment and that decision application, as well as the interpretation exercise that has to take place today. However, it's clear that they failed to establish those substantive links before the court, and the court dismissed that recusal application. Costs are reserved, and we do expect that those reasons by the Constitutional Court will be given when they give the full judgment regarding the correct interpretation of Section 47 of Section 1E.
And Canny, of course, it's going to be quite interesting then to hear how this one goes, because you are now hearing an argument by the former president's lawyers who are saying that a remission has the effect of a discount and it reduces the price of an item. That's what they're saying. And they're saying that a remission results in a sentence being reduced. But of course, the IEC also arguing against this very point as well.
Well, this is the IEC's application essentially appealing against the Electoral Court order, that is the April order, which essentially found that, one, the drafters of the Constitution, when they wrote Section 47 of Section 1E, they had the right to appeal in mind. And now because the former president was sentenced and convicted in the highest court in the land by design, that is the Constitutional Court, that is our apex court, it's also the highest court in terms of appeals, that decision was final. And because he didn't have that Section 35 right, the Electoral Court did not agree that the Section 47 1E applied to him and that the Commission erred when it did so. So, of course, the Commission would need clarity on this. There was another issue as well which keeps coming up, which is the remission of sentence. We know that in that majority judgment, it was Justice Modiba who really dealt with the subject in detail, stating that when that decision was made, it effectively reduced the former president's sentence from 15 months to 3 months. However, the IEC is rejecting this argument, along with the Friends of the Court, which have aligned, stating that all this remission did was that it reduced the time served by the former president, but the sentence handed down by the judiciary remains 15 months. And that is the manner in which it should be interpreted by the Constitutional Court when they make this determination. There's also another argument, Bongiwe, that was raised by the IEC as to why this matter is urgent and why it needs to be heard before we go to those 29 May polls. Now, you know, the former president is ranked number 1 on the MK party list. And we know that those lists are made public so that the public can see and voters can see that when they head to the polls and they mark their X on that ballot, they must know exactly who they're going to be sending to the National Assembly or the provincial legislature. Now, the IEC is arguing that there's a need for finality because whether he is entitled to contest or not can't be established after he's contested. The IEC is saying that logic or that form, or rather, could be absurd in the Constitutional Court. Now, the question on eligibility, they're arguing, needs to be reached before the 29th of May, not after the 29th of May. So the question surrounding whether should he be a candidate or not is something that the public is entitled to know before they go and cast their votes. If they don't know this before they go and cast their votes, and they perhaps, an example is someone goes and casts a vote under the impression that he's eligible, then it later comes out that he may not be eligible, then you risk tainting the election outcome. And then you could have election disputes, and then you see a scenario where, since the dawn of democracy, you now have the credibility of elections and the IEC not being safeguarded by the Constitution because there isn't finality on that issue.
And Canny, all of this, of course, circling around Section 47, even as you alluded to as well, the former president's lawyers arguing that the primary question that the court has to answer here is that the IEC, does the IEC have the power or even the business, as they call it, to disqualify the former president from the list of parliament, and whether or not it is the job of the IEC to implement Section 47 or it's the job of the National Assembly. And quite interesting, especially in light of what you've just said.
Yes, indeed. Advocate Dalimpofu, on behalf of the MK party and the former president, is asking the court to answer this question of whether the IEC was correct to determine an issue which can only be dealt with at the National Assembly according to them. However, the IEC rather is saying that they're empowered by the Constitution, that is Section 30 of the Electoral Act as well, to safeguard the elections, safeguard the credibility of the elections, and avoid the risk that is associated with allowing a candidate that could possibly not be eligible in terms of Section 47, subsection 1E, to stand in the elections and allow those elections to go through and then come out with a disputed outcome. So it's quite a difficult case for the ConCourt to deal with, because it is a rather rare instance in which you've seen an individual be sentenced and convicted in the highest court in the land, not being appealable at that time. But of course, that's just the design of the judiciary. But the IEC is essentially asking the ConCourt to overturn that order, stating that they have a constitutional duty to overturn that order and ensure that the elections of 29 May are free and fair.
All right, Canny Maphanga, they will leave it there and let you go back inside, and she will be bringing you more updates during the course of the evening. That's Canny Maphanga, SABC News reporter.